Blake Shelton has always been the man who hides his heart behind a joke, a smile, or a song. But when he finally opened up about Kelly Clarkson, not as a co-host, not as a superstar, but as the friend who carried him through the darkest years of his life, his confession stunned everyone. No one expected him to speak this openly. No one expected the truth to cut this deep. And what Blake finally admitted is something fans never saw coming. Before the world ever saw their playful banter, their teasing, or the unmatched chemistry that made the voice unforgettable. Blake Shelton and Kelly Clarkson were simply two people quietly trying to survive the hardest chapters of their lives. Blake had just come through a divorce that split his world down the middle. The spotlight magnified every wound, every rumor, every lonely night he tried to laugh his way through. He was hurting, deeply, and barely holding himself together behind the jokes he threw like shields. Kelly was fighting her own private war. Her marriage was collapsing behind closed doors, leaving her with a broken heart, a custody battle, and the crushing expectation to stay strong for millions of fans who depended on her smile. Most people saw her energy, her humor, her unstoppable positivity. Blake saw something different, a woman barely keeping herself from breaking each time the cameras turned off. When Kelly joined the coaching panel, something shifted instantly. Blake wasn't looking for a friend. He wasn't looking for comfort. He certainly wasn't looking for someone who would see straight through the persona he used to protect himself. But Kelly did, without effort, without judgment. She matched his humor, matched his fire, but she also matched his pain. Pain neither of them talked about publicly, but both carried like secret weights. They formed a connection that wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone who wasn't paying attention. Blake would make a joke, and Kelly would answer with the exact kind of laughter that told him she understood more than she let on. She would have a bad day, and Blake would quietly take the pressure off her, stepping in, stepping up, shielding her from stress she never asked for. They developed an unspoken language built on survival. But the moment Blake never forgot happened off-camera one late evening. Filming had wrapped early, and Kelly seemed off-tired, in a way makeup couldn't cover, hurt in a way rehearsals couldn't distract from. She sat down beside him, not as a co-star, not as a powerhouse vocalist, but as someone exhausted by life. She began opening up about the unraveling of her marriage, the fear of failure, the guilt, the loneliness. And Blake did something he wasn't known for. He stayed quiet. He listened. He held space for her. In her voice, he heard echoes of his own past. In her tears, he saw reflections of his own heartbreak. And in that moment, Blake realized how deeply their lives had mirrored each other, how pain had shaped them, how fame had bruised them, and how both were still trying to stand tall for a world that rarely cared to look beneath the surface. It was then that Blake understood a truth he had never spoken aloud, a truth that lived beneath everything he would later confess. Kelly Clarkson wasn't just a friend. She wasn't just a colleague. She was the person who unknowingly gave him back something he thought he had lost forever. The feeling of being understood, and the heartbreaking part. He knew exactly how much she needed that same understanding, long before she ever asked for it. The deeper Blake got to know Kelly, the more he understood how much she had been carrying in silence. To the public, she was unstoppable. Bright, loud, hilarious. The woman who could light up a room simply by breathing in it. But Blake saw the cracks. He saw the tremble in her hands when she'd hold a coffee cup on difficult days. He saw the exhaustion she tried to hide behind oversized sweaters and cheerful sarcasm, and he saw the loneliness behind her smile. Because he had worn that same smile once himself, the world admired Kelly Clarkson. The superstar, Blake, admired Kelly, the survivor. When her divorce exploded into the headlines, Kelly became the center of a storm she never wanted. Every detail was dissected, every emotion magnified, every rumor spread like wildfire. She had to perform, judge, rehearse, host, parent, all while grieving the end of a marriage she fought to save. Blake watched her push through pain most people never live through publicly. And it hit him. She was fighting this battle entirely alone. One afternoon, during a break in filming, Blake found Kelly sitting quietly in her chair, not joking, not singing, not pretending, just still. When he asked if she was okay, she didn't give her usual upbeat answer. Instead, she whispered, "I'm trying." Blake felt something inside him break, because he had once said those exact words when his own world was falling apart. That was the moment he stepped in, not as a co-host, not as a mentor, but as the kind of friend he wished he had when his life collapsed. He shielded her from production stress, took over conversations when she couldn't speak, distracted her with jokes when she was on the verge of tears. He reminded her she was strong when she didn't believe it. And he made sure she never felt like she was walking through her heartbreak unnoticed. But here's the heartbreaking truth Blake finally admitted. Kelly Clarkson saved him first. He just spent the next years returning the favor. And yet, even through the laughter and the support, Blake sensed something deeper inside her, a sadness growing quietly, a weight she refused to share, a fear she couldn't put into words. He knew the world would never understand what she was truly going through. But he did. As months passed, Blake watched Kelly rebuild herself piece by piece, the way only someone who has survived devastation can. She showed up to work even when she had barely slept. She sang live even when her voice trembled with emotion. She laughed on camera even when she had cried just minutes earlier. Blake admired her strength, but he also feared what that kind of strength costs a person over time. He saw the toll it took. He saw how she poured herself into everyone else, contestants, crews, fans, while saving nothing for herself. He saw how she pushed through pain not because she was healed, but because she didn't know how to stop. And then came the day everything changed. During a quiet moment off stage, Kelly asked him a simple question. "Does it ever stop hurting?" Blake froze. Because after all these years, after losing love, after rebuilding his life, after pretending everything was fine, he knew the truth. The hurt never fully disappears. You just learn to live around it. But he didn't tell Kelly that. Instead, he sat down beside her and finally opened up about his own darkness. He told her about the nights he couldn't sleep, the mornings he didn't want to get up, the way heartbreak had hollowed him out from the inside. He admitted that long before she arrived on The Voice, he felt lost, in ways he never dared to say publicly. And then, in a moment he never expected, the truth slipped out. The truth that left fans heartbroken when he finally spoke it out loud. "If you hadn't joined the show when you did, I don't know where I'd be. You saved my life without even knowing it." Kelly stared at him, stunned, tears gathering in her eyes. She always believed she was the burden, the one who needed support, the one who leaned too hard, the one who brought her pain into the room. She never imagined she was someone's lifeline. Blake told her the world saw her as strong, talented, and unstoppable. But he saw the woman who kept him afloat when he felt like the last pieces of himself were slipping away. And though the cameras would never capture this moment, and fans would never hear the full story. Until years later, one thing became painfully clear. Blake wasn't just supporting Kelly through her heartbreak, he was repaying a debt she didn't even know she was owed. Blake never planned on telling the world what Kelly meant to him. Some truths feel too personal, too sacred to share. But as time passed, and both of their lives changed in ways neither expected, he realized people deserved to understand the woman behind the laughter, and the friend behind his survival. So when he finally spoke publicly, his voice carried a weight fans had never heard from him before. He didn't talk about music or competition or awards. He talked about Kelly. The real Kelly. The woman who walked into his life when he was falling apart. The woman who lifted him without asking for anything in return. The woman who saved him simply by being herself. And then he said the sentence that stunned fans everywhere. "I wouldn't have made it through those years without her. She didn't just help me. She kept me alive." Kelly Clarkson is the strongest person I know. For a man who rarely reveals his emotions, it was the closest Blake had ever come to breaking. And in that moment, the world saw what he had always known. Kelly wasn't just a co-star. She was his anchor, his mirror, his silent healer. And Blake's confession didn't just honor her. It revealed a bond built from two wounded hearts that kept each other standing. Blake Shelton's words revealed a truth deeper than fame, deeper than music. A bond forged through pain, healing, and unwavering friendship. Kelly Clarkson saved him without ever knowing it, and he stood by her when she needed it most. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful moments.